Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be breaking down episode 6. Is that where we are? Yes, episode 6 of EVIL. I believe the episode is called 770. But actually I was doing some looking around after I watched it while I was doing my breakdown, and there were other names for it too. I'm not sure what that's about, but anyway, this episode actually takes place the very next day after the previous episode. So after the day after the exorcism. What was that one? That was October 31st, the October 31 episode. So yeah, this one is directly the day after all that happened. So in this episode, the church sends David, Ben, and Kristen to check out a local daycare worker, a woman named Grace, because they want to know if she is a prophet of God. As they begin to question her, David asks what does God want of me, like of him specifically. To which she says that he is in danger because of his visions. Grace also tells Kristen to stay away from the color red for like 7 days. The church asks the team to check out Grace's prophecies to make sure that they are correct. One such prophecy involving a sinkhole that comes true. So when the first time they went to the daycare to speak to said prophet, she was actually talking to another woman about she had to leave her house. She was in danger of the house falling into darkness, something to that effect. Yeah, and then later on, that actually comes true. There's like a whole news report that I think David sees it, either David or Kristen, or David calls Kristen and she switches it on. But anyway, they actually see the news report of it on television. So that prophecy that she's told was confirmed. The church wants confirmation of what Grace, the prophet, is talking about. However, Ben and Kristen both still believe that there's a scientific reason for her knowing about the sinkhole, right? Saying that there's like, you subconsciously pick up on like cues or whatever, like, I don't know, rumbling, hearing rumbling and all that kind of stuff that you sort of subconsciously pick up on to say that, you know, like shit's about to hit the fan. And through all this, David and Kristen are still upset with each other over the experiment that she did during the exorcism. So, like, on their way to the daycare to meet Grace, poor Ben, I think David's driving, Kristen's in the back seat, and Ben's sitting beside David. Or maybe, yeah, that's how it was. And then he's like, it's like stupid quiet in the car, and he's trying to make conversation and nobody's talking, and it's just so friggin' awkward. Like, you guys aren't talking to each other? It's like, there ain't nothing to say. It's so awkward. It is so friggin' awkward. But they do end up having a discussion about it, like David and Kristen, right? They end up having a wee discussion about, you know, like, you want to do an experiment, you need to trust me to tell me, that kind of thing. Like, I still need to know what's going on. You have doubts, that's great. That's why you're part of this team, right? I understand that, and I get that, and it's, you know, whatever. But, like, you need to trust me to let me know what you're going to do if you're going to pull something like that. And Kristen's whole point of view was, well, that would have, you know, you would have told the exorcist what I was doing, and that just would have blown the whole thing, right? Like, they're both right, but it's awkward. Also, Leland and Sharon, Leland and Cheryl are seen, like, living it up at the club. They're dancing and partying, and, like, Leland's just a party animal. Like, this guy is so creepy, but it's so interesting, I guess, to see him, like, getting down in the club, right? It's like a kid in a candy store, like, this is my song, and he comes and grabs her. She's like, they're all your song. Like, same. Later that night, Kristen dreams about the argument she had with David, but instead of her walking away, David grabs her and they kiss. And I mean, when I say he grabs, I mean, like, he grabs her. He's like, like, it's, there's force behind that grab. Kind of took me back a little bit, and her too. Like, she's like, oh my god, and then she's like, oh my god. Like, gets a little spicy. As they're kissing, David turns into the demon George, and she immediately wakes up. That was crazy. I'm so happy, though, that we got to see George again. I love that character so friggin' much. Want more George. She ends up talking to Dr. Boggs, her therapist, and I'm happy to see him again. He's okay. He's still a little scratched up from the exorcism, but he's fine. About the dream, to which he suggests that she try lucid dreaming to help control her dreams. So there's like this blue elastic or whatever, and she's supposed to, I don't know, take it off or something when she goes to bed. I don't know. There was a whole thing with this elastic, and if she looked down and it wasn't there, if it wasn't on her wrist, she'd know she was dreaming, right? And then he tells her to, like, confront George. I love how they refer to him by name now. It's awesome. He tells her, you know, you need to, you know, what are you doing here? What do you want? You have no power over me. This is my dream. I control my dream, and that kind of thing, right? So later that night, Kristen dreams of Demon George again, and that's exactly what she does. She realizes she doesn't have, well, I think she was talking on the phone to David, and you can hear him, do you need help, do you need help, do you need help? And you see George is kind of camouflaged into the ceiling. I love when they do that shit. They camouflage him in spots, and if you look, you can find him, but if you're not looking, you really don't see him. It's wonderful how they shoot it. But, you know, they kind of banter back and forth, whatever, and she realizes that she's dreaming, and she does the whole, what do you want? I'm taking control, blah, blah, blah. And he says something about wanting to take a bite or whatever, and he ends up biting a chunk out of her arm, and that's how she wakes up. It's like, bitch, you ain't got no control. It is all me. Like, I love Demon George so much. I don't know why. I just love him. Kristen goes to Grace, the prophet, to ask about her daughter's health. Like, that's not why she goes there. She's actually there doing the questionnaire that we saw her do in the pilot episode with the guy in jail. And the conversation switches to ask me what you really want to know, right? And so she brings up her daughter's heart condition. and she asks if the condition will improve. I think, because at that time she gets a message on her phone, I think she got a message from the doctor's office, but I'm not sure. I am assuming. Grace tells her that it will improve, but Kristen doesn't believe her or her methods. Because when, they're sitting in this daycare and it's stupid loud, all the kids are running around playing, screaming, whatever, right? Doing kid things. And she says, God talks really quiet, whatever, Grace says, God talks really quiet and whatever. But then when she's, talking to God about Kristen's daughter, she just kind of randomly picks up this balloon thing and starts blowing it up, and it's everybody's looking at each other and they're looking at her. Okay. And when she's asked about it, because they ask her outright about it, she says sometimes God talks too quietly, and blowing up the balloon helps her focus and hear him when he's stupid quiet. It makes no sense to me, but I'm not a prophet, so sure. Meanwhile, David asks the Monsignor, so they go back to the church. David asks the Monsignor why the church is pursuing this case so hard. And he shows the group a book of prophecies no one other than the popes have seen. But somehow, Grace seems to be aware of the prophecies within the book. The Monsignor wants to know how she knows, because these prophecies are dangerous to everyone. In order to find out, he asks David to translate the book. Once he does, we find out that it predicts the end of the Catholic Church, which is why the book has remained hidden. So I put this down in the wrong spot here, but I have a little highlighted note here. These prophecies are they're originally told, the Monsignor tells them that it's a 15-page book of prophecies, called the, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, called the Pavaglia Codex. And they say that it dates back to 1550. So she should have absolutely no knowledge of it. And the only people, according to the Monsignor, that know about the book are I don't know, high priests and popes. I don't know why I have it written in the wrong spot, but I do. I think I was thinking of it while I was writing and I just put it in the wrong spot, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Y'all don't care. David goes to ask more questions of Grace to find out if she is a true or a false prophet. Because the church is flipping the fuck out over this, right? She was right about the sinkholes, and she'd actually drawn pictures with weird writing and whatever that lined up to certain burnt out parts of certain pages within the codex. Yeah, it was actually kind of weird, kind of cool. But the Monsignor's flipping out over this, right? When he's done, he goes home and makes his hypno tea and trips balls. I love it when he does this. And Kristen ends up coming over, but feels uncomfortable with his current state. So I don't remember the conversation that David had with Grace in that scene, but he goes home and decides that, I mean, she tells him that he doesn't need to see God to know that God loves him, and all this kind of stuff, right? Which, I mean, she's trying to be comforting to him, right? Because he's sort of, I don't think that he appreciates, I think he's slightly jealous, maybe, of how Grace can hear God, whereas, and be so truly certain of it, right? Whereas the visions that he has, and when he hears God, he's not sure, like he's not sure what he's hearing is truly coming from God, right? So he goes home and he makes his little hypno tea, boils up some shrooms, and, assumes the position. He lays down in bed and starts to trip balls. And Kristen comes knocking on the door, and he goes to get up, and at one point he's up and he's leaning on the wall to hold himself up, and he looks over at his bed and sees himself laying in bed, and he just goes, oh fuck. Like, for us, he's just tripping. He lets her in, and she's the one that tells him how everything lines up in the pictures that she's drawing. Everything lines up and whatever, and to the actual codex pages, right? And she's showing him and everything, and he's just sitting there like, yeah, okay. He's like laughing at her and whatever. He can't take nothing serious. He's tripping balls. But he gets beside her at one point, and he's just like a little too inner bubble, and she just gets all kinds of weirded out. Like, I mean, she's hot for him, and he's like stupid close to her, and she's just like, gotta go. And she leaves. But when he looks back, like, toward his bed, there's like a chair there, and there's this really creepy figure. It looks like a kid, like a cherub, like this, like ready to pounce, and he's kind of doing, this kind of thing on it's fucking weird. It's fucking weird. He's like, who are you? And it doesn't answer, it doesn't growl, like nothing, and then like it's just gone. It's weird, but I kind of loved it. Leland shows up to Kristen's home with Cheryl and the kids for dinner. Kristen finds him alone with the kids in their room. He claims he didn't know Cheryl was her mom. Knowing that he's lying, she has him follow her to her office. And as they're going through, like, the kitchen out the back door to her garage, office, whatever, she reaches over and grabs a great big old knife from the knife thing. She picks up a knife and cuts him, telling him to stay away from her and her family and to never see her mom again. And it's crazy, the interaction they have. Like, she comes home from work, whatever she was doing, and like Leland is just upstairs with the girls in their room, like alone with the door closed. Like, what's wrong with Cheryl? I mean, I get you like him and whatever, and whatever, but like, you're gonna let some dude that the kids don't know, that the mom doesn't know, alone in their room with the doors, like, that's crazy. And when Kristen comes home, of course, she didn't seem to think anything of it either. Like, I just thought that scene was acted out kind of odd, like very dismissive of the fact that there's a stranger alone in a closed room with your kids. Like, but when she goes upstairs, she can hear them singing and laughing and whatever, And she just loses her fucking mind. Like, it's as soon as she realizes who it is, yeah. Cheryl finds out what happened, and Kristen tries to warn her mom that Leland is dangerous. Even playing the recording of him saying the atrocious things he was saying back in the first episode about... was it the first episode? I don't remember now. But what he was saying about some kid getting like assaulted in jail and like losing his innocence, that yeah, she played her mom that. Not that day. That night that confrontation happened, she ended up leaving and going to the hospital with Leland, right? But like the next day they get together and she plays the tape for her mom of what Leland said. It was insane. The awful things that she said to Kristen, and yeah. Cheryl eventually tells Leland that she can't see him, that she must put her family first. You know, she's hot for him and everything, basically, but, you know, my daughter doesn't like you, so I can't see you. However, they do end up in bed together, and we see the bed surrounded in flames at one point. The next morning, Cheryl gets up and goes to her closet and picks out a red dress. Like, and it's like, you know, she's got like one white thing in there, a shit ton of black things, and this, like, in the middle, this like red dress, like hooker red dress. Stood out. Meanwhile, David returns to the Monsignors with a drawing Grace did, and it matches the page of the book, The Prophecies, which depicts the end of the world. Monsignor wants her to draw more to find out what she knows about the book. When the team returned to visit Grace, now, I didn't put it in here, but at this point, David's like really pushing to find out why the church wants to know whether Grace is a true or a false prophet. Like, what the fuck do you care, right? Like, for real, for real. And Monsignor breaks down and says that, okay, well, actually, let me see, did I write it down here? Yeah. Actually, there isn't 15 pages to this codex. It's more like 280. And it doesn't depict the end of the world. It predicts the end of the church. Right? So it's personal gain on the end of the church, really. Is kind of what I got from it. But when the team returned to visit Grace, they find that there has been a raid at the daycare, and ICE has detained her and 2 kids. They go to where Grace is being held and ask her to draw to fill in the missing pieces, but the guards throw away her drawings, and it just kind of ends. So, to elaborate on that, when they go, it's like the whole team, right? It's David, Grace, David, Kristen, Ben, Grace's friend. There's a gentleman that actually was the one that called the church to get them involved on her behalf. And all of them go down, and, you know, of course they're like, only one person can go see her, so her friend goes, and David goes under the guise of being her lawyer, and they sit her down, and it's like, we need this, blah blah blah, and she just starts drawing like mad, right? She goes to the detainment officers and gets a marker and a pad of paper, and she just starts drawing shit, right? Then when their time is up, you know, they come get her, like, you know, your time's up, you gotta go, right? So she shows David that she's done some drawings, right? And he's like, cool beans. She goes over to one of the guards and gives him the pad of paper and marker and says, "Can you give this to my lawyer?" And he's like, "Yep, yep, yep." She leaves and another guard comes in. So there's two guards and they're both sort of flipping through this thing. And the one takes it, walks over, waits for David to leave, and then throws it in the garbage. So they're in on something. They're not who they seem to be, in my opinion, from the best that I can tell. So that is the end of episode 6. I keep forgetting where I'm at. Yes, episode 6. So in my final thoughts, I must admit I had to look up what ICE was. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I had no idea. I've seen that word thrown around lately. I did not know what the frigate meant or what it pertained to. I had no idea. I know now. I also put down here that Kristen's phone, at one point, Kristen's phone goes off and she looks at it. You know how we all have our little screensaver thingies? Well, most of us. Hers, I noticed, looks a lot like the circular thing in the first vision we see of David's, where he thinks he sees that friend of his that passed. I can't remember her name now. But I made note of that because I thought that that was interesting. It might mean nothing. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But I thought that that's what it looked like, and I thought that was interesting. When Kristen has her nightmare, and she's doing the lucid dreaming thing, she has this blue thing on her wrist, right? And when it's not there, it means that she's dreaming, right? Okay, so when she has the nightmare with Demon George, she is rock climbing, and her husband, you can hear her husband talking behind her, right? She looks down. No, he's telling her to look forward, right? There's somebody over there. There's somebody over there. So she's like looking, and you see George, or the outline of him, right? There's like a snowstorm and whatever. And then for whatever reason, she looks down. I'm thinking she was looking at her wrist for her blue band, right? It's not on her wrist, but there is, oddly enough, a blue tether line tied to her waist, and George is holding it, and I thought that was very interesting. I talked about David tripping balls. I talked about the creepy kid. When Leland went to see the kids, when he was alone with the kids, he had given them all diaries, and in the diaries, in the first page, right, was a drawing. I only seen one, but I'm sure they all had it. I just don't know if they were all the same thing. Of like a looked like a pig, and these weird symbols and whatever, weird writing and whatever. So I thought that was interesting, and of course, Kristen took all the diaries away from them, right? David also ends up explaining his visions to Kristen. So, like back in the first one, Leland says, ask David about the second time he talked to God. He explains to her that when she'd come over the night before, he was in fact tripping balls. He explains all that to her, which I thought was kind of nice, because she was very taken aback, and at the same time she was kind of like, like when she left, she's kind of smiling at the door and whatever. So, I mean, girls were weird. But I thought that that was good that he kind of explained that to her, because, I mean, yeah, that was kind of a lot. And my last thought was this episode did not involve Ben much at all. I don't read anything into that. I just thought that that was interesting. It was a very David Kristen centered episode. There was not much of Ben at all. So that's it. That's all. That's everything I've got. It was a very good episode. It cut out. It was a very interesting episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gives you a lot to sort of think about and chew on. And I'm glad I have notes to go back to, because I can never remember from show to show, from, you know, episode to episode, everything that happened. So it's nice to have something to look back on and be like, ah, yes. Anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown. If there's anything that I missed, feel free to mention it in the comments. However, remember, please no spoilers. I would like to learn as I go watching the show and not from the comment section below. Until next time, take care of yourself and see you later.